Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining. Hello from wherever in the world you are joining from, and let's go ahead and take a look at who we've got in the chat today. I'm gonna go ahead and put this map up on the screen so you all can see it. Go ahead and if you are just joining us, go ahead and say where you are joining from. Nice to see everybody here in the chat. I see there's a lot of good comments already and some questions. So I will make sure to go through those in a little bit. I know that some parts of the world have just switched over their clocks and we have not yet in the US because I don't know why that changed. So it's very possible that the email I sent out this morning has the wrong times in the other time zones that are not the US because I forgot to account for that. So apologies, but yes, it is the same time for me, and in a few weeks we will adjust the clocks and I will continue doing it at the same time for me. But good to see everybody here. Thanks all for joining. I am back doing my normal stream today, this morning. Probably not gonna do a second stream today. I don't know how many of you were around for last week in the evening after the first stream I did. I had a impromptu live stream where I decided to just go ahead and work on the case live, the case I was building, which was an adventure to say the least. I got a little bit done, did not make a ton of progress. I now have the parts I need to finish, so at some point I will be finishing that. I think I'm gonna keep doing it on a stream. I'm trying to decide between YouTube or just doing it on Twitch, because it seems like more of a Twitch thing, to be honest. I don't know, let me know what you think. I don't use Twitch at all right now, so it would be a completely new, like a new thing. I don't really know how it works. So I don't know if that's a good idea or not. But I guess my thought for Twitch would be to not flood the YouTube audience with relatively boring content that is sort of just chill, monotonous work. So that's my thought there. But if you all are happy to watch it on YouTube, then I will just keep doing it on YouTube. Fine with me. So let me see who we've got in the chat here. Oh, did you notice the countdown at the beginning? I was doing through eCam. So that was my graphic loaded into eCam as an overlay and then a clock overlaid on top of it. And then that was output over HDMI into the ATEM so that I can mix it just like I showed in the tutorial I just published yesterday. So same idea going on there. All right, I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat say I should just stay on YouTube, which fair enough. Let me go bring up the chat here. Stay on YouTube. Yeah, okay, sure. Twitch is full of annoying people. Keeping live video content in one place makes it easier. Yeah, this is an interesting point though. So yeah, I don't really know anything about Twitch or like what people expect to find there other than games. I know there's a lot of non-gaming content, so that was sort of the idea. But one of the dangers of keeping all of your stuff in one place is that you're relying on that one platform. So if I'm only doing stuff on YouTube and YouTube decides to make a change to whatever, policy or their ad rates or how they decide to distribute videos, then all of a sudden it has a dramatic effect on everything I'm doing with video on the internet. So that's the danger there. So the idea is if you like diversify your platforms and use a bunch of different platforms, then you can sort of spread out the risk there. But it is still like, would be a whole other thing I would have to learn and understand and figure out what are the sort of conventions. Randy says Twitch is starting to cater to musicians broadcasting live music. That is really interesting. That is, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, they could cancel you if you say something they don't agree with. I don't tend to talk about controversial topics. I'm talking about, video technology. So I don't think I'm personally at a risk for that, but that's definitely a concern for a lot of people. So Yeah, YouTube straw poll seems fairly conclusive. I agree. You can record the YouTube stream and re-air on Twitch. Yeah, that doesn't really solve the problem. Simulcast could solve that problem. However, I don't think... So I know that Twitch terms of service require that if you are in their partner program, you can't simultaneously broadcast. So if I do end up getting into the the YouTube or the Twitch ad network, then you can't multi-stream anymore. Tommy says, I get a Twitch sometimes when I drink too much caffeine. What are we talking about? Yeah, apparently that's what we're talking about. All right. So today I have, things are mostly the same around here. This is my, my YouTube comment thing that I've got in the browser extension. So I've done a video about that now that you can go see. This is how I'm sort of monitoring what YouTube is telling me and deciding if my stream is too low of a bit rate. My two ATEMs over here, music's playing off this little thingy. I've got my multi-view on my main monitor as well as mirrored over to the one behind me, which is the wireless, which I've done a little bit of cable management on, and it's looking a little better. I still have to find a new version of this cable. This one's like super thick and stiff, so I can't really like bend it, but I want to sort of tuck it away better. So I have another one coming. But I have I did this power cable nice and neat down there. It's supposed to hide behind that pole. And it's just one cable going down to the floor, just the USB power powering the monitor. And then this monitor happens to have a USB out, which is strong enough to power the Hollyland receiver, which is on the back. And let's see if I can get the light there. This is actually powered over USB, stuck to the monitor with Velcro, sticky Velcro, or hook fastener. I don't think it's actually Velcro. Trademark. But yeah, this thing is powered over USB, which is the Hollyland Mars 300 Pro, the new one without the extra antennas. And apparently this monitor is strong enough to power it, so that's super cool. USB-C, a little short USB-C cable there. Tommy says you can get a HDMI elbow bracket to reroute it. I haven't seen a mini HDMI elbow bracket, but I should look for that because that would be a lot better. This is a mini, not micro and not full HDMI, which is like, I think the worst of all of them, but it does work and it is slim, which is why they use it on this thing because it's like a 1/4 inch thick. If I could find a mini HDMI L bracket, that would be a lot cleaner. Yep. pickleJAR says I vote for Twitch. I think he has a new Frontier vibe. Yeah, well, we'll see. Roland says, you're using a companion on a Pi. If so, is this because you want to be able to switch out computers with no reconfig? Do you use companion Pi or a custom build? I do. So I do have on my, can I move my wide camera? Yes, I can. On my desk is the Stream Deck, which is in fact connected to a Raspberry Pi, which is tucked somewhere back there. I can't see it. And that is running companion on the Pi because that way it's just sort of hardwired in here. And that means I can do, switch scenes with those button presses. I like using it on the Pi because that, for some reason, that companion software eats a lot of CPU for breakfast. It just is a CPU power hungry thing. And when it's running on my actual computer, if my computer is doing anything else, the fan starts to kick in and it can't stay powered up because the power supply isn't strong enough or whatever. I'm actually plugged into the proper power supply for this machine, which is the 16-inch MacBook, and I'm plugged into the actual 96-watt power supply, and my battery is now at 78%, and it started at 100 this morning. So I don't know what's up with that, but I've got 2 monitors, so I guess that's just too much for it. And yeah, so I do it on the Pi to offload that work from my computer. Theoretically, I could have a second computer, another computer here to easily swap out. It also means if my computer crashes, I can still control the stream because I'm not actually doing anything on the computer except for the chat right now. Everything else is hardwired in. All right, let me scroll back up through the chat here and see what else we've got. Oh, Randy, thank you for the super chat. I think that was during the pre-show. I'm not sure what happened to the photo. But thank you for joining, and thanks for the super chat. Here's a question from Jonathan. My ATEM USB-C recordings are coming in at under 10 megabits, even when the Hyperdeck high is selected. Hyperdeck recording are ProRes 422, 160 megabits. Can I get that with USB? Now, the USB is completely different from everything else. So the USB-C is not the same format or codec or anything compared to everything else in there. The Hyperdeck itself will record the best quality for sure because it's doing ProRes, and the USB just doesn't output in the same format, so it's not gonna really work that way. John says, hi from Portland. I'm also in Portland. Using ATEM Mini for self-production music live stream with multiple cameras, need hands-free. Know of a reasonable solution to add a foot switch, 2-switch cameras. I do, in fact. There is a pretty cool little device, these little foot pedals. This one's called, oh, focus. I don't think that's not autofocus. Here. This one is called the AirTurn, and it has 2 buttons, but they also make a 4-button one. And this thing is, you can sort of rig it up through a couple of other programs to eventually make it control the ATEM. And I actually demoed that on a live stream. So it should have that device in the thumbnail if you scroll back a little bit through the live things. But it's great. Here is a link to the AirTurn pedal, Bluetooth foot pedal. All right, where was I in the chat? Yeah, time change. Simon says, do you think you could use the ATEM Mini Pro stream to a Mac running an RTMP server, then use the USB-C port to record? This would get the stream into my Mac and allow recording. You could. I'm confused why. Oh, yes, right. USB-C to record to disk, to a hard drive. And then, can OBS be an RTMP server? I don't think it can be an RTMP server, but I think it can play an RTMP feed, which means if you ran an RTMP server on the Mac, you could have the ATEM stream to that and then pull from that into OBS or something to rebroadcast it. Would totally work. I don't know if it's as easy to install that that RTMP server on a Mac compared to the Raspberry Pi like I did in that tutorial, though. Just a reminder, if you do have a question for me, make sure you mention my name so that it shows up nice and bright on my screen here. So this is a good point. I've been seeing people talk about this in relation to the video I did about the Raspberry Pi streaming bridge clone that I did. So I built a streaming bridge equivalent in a Raspberry Pi. And the reason that it works in the Raspberry Pi is actually because specifically of the architecture of the Raspberry Pi. And the reason is because the graphics card in the Pi like takes control of the machine before the rest of the machine boots up. So the graphics card has control over everything, which means it can actually output stuff over the HDMI port without like going through the Linux stack. So normally if you're on a Linux machine and you want to output over the video card, you have to like have the X Windows stuff booted up, right? And then you need to like be logged in as a user so that the user has permission to output over the video card, and it's kind of like going in the front door. The Raspberry Pi flips it, and the video card like controls the system, so it can actually just do whatever it wants over the video card without dealing with Linux stuff. So that's the reason it works, is because on the Pi specifically, there's a program that can output a video feed over HDMI because of that architecture. And that's not something you get on most other architectures. So even though there's plenty of more powerful machines than a Raspberry Pi that you could be using for this, it works in the Raspberry Pi specifically because of that reason. So I think it's interesting, but that's also like, that's why that tutorial works, and that's why it works so easily without having to make you go through extra hoops to make it work in a regular Linux machine. Morten says, in a multi-camera setup with wireless HDMI transmitters, are the streams in sync? So anytime you're dealing with any cameras, HDMI, you're always going to have syncing issues because no cameras have the same delay with HDMI out. Like probably same model cameras do, but between models of cameras, you're going to be dealing with different video delays out from their own HDMI ports. If you then add wireless HDMI transmitters, you are adding in another variable that is going to be different depending on the transmitter you're using. So I would not expect at all that those are in sync. So like this thing is connected to a wireless HDMI, and you can see that there's a delay, right? Like you can see there's a delay there. And that's actually probably a little bit more delay than just the wireless, because I'm going through several different layers here. One is showing me the feed in this little monitor, then it goes into I forget the order, but it's going into the transmitter, and then it's also going into the Hyperdeck through an SDI converter, and it's also then getting up to this monitor somehow, and I honestly forget all the different steps to make that work, but it's a whole chain of stuff. So that's why there's that delay on that monitor. Daniel asks, I would like to connect two ATEM Mini Pros. The reason is to have more keys. Yep. I would like to connect them with a Raspberry Pi 4, USB-C in, HDMI out. Could this work? Why do you not want to just run the HDMI out from one ATEM to the other? That's how I've been doing it, and it works cool. It works great. So in this case, I have the second ATEM back here is HDMI out running into this one, and then I can, well, I can't switch it right now because that's what's showing the camera, but right now you can see input 2 is actually this camera. It's then feeding the program out into here, which is showing you what's on 4. So this is the multi-view of my main ATEM. I can, and you can see that this ATEM is showing you the wide camera. So I use doubled up ATEMs, one, just to get more inputs, but also because, yeah, you can get more keys that way. Curious to hear more about Companion Pi. Did you do a video about this previously? I have not yet because, oh yeah, I forgot to answer the other part of that question. The other part of that question was, do I use the stock Companion image, or did I do a custom install? And I did a custom install because they didn't have the image out yet when I installed it. So they do now ship just an image you can just burn onto a SD card, and that's definitely the easiest option, and I would probably recommend doing that at this point. But it also wasn't that hard to just install from scratch. All I did was I followed their instructions on their wiki. So that's why I didn't do a video about it yet, because I was like, I don't know how much more I can add to this. It's very well documented, and if you just follow their instructions, it works. So, yeah. Oh, back to the RTMP server question. Yeah, there'll be a delay, of course, if you're doing anything over RTMP. What HDMI splitters do you use mentioned in your eCam guest video? That was the video I did yesterday. Did I not link to those? I think I've stopped linking to those because I don't trust the listing anymore. But I can drop a link in anyway. This is the splitter that I use, which is I have like 4 of them because I bought them for that multi-view video ages ago, and though they happen to not be HDCP compliant, which is very convenient because it means I can run a Chromecast into the ATEM through the splitter. unpowered even, which is cool. However, it looks like the listing now says they support HDCP, so I'm not sure they will actually strip HDCP anymore. So no promises anymore on that, but for a while that was a good one. And yeah, I'm gonna have to look around, but basically you have to find one that doesn't mention HDCP, because they can't say that it strips it, because that's definitely not legal. Because it's, you know, if it's stripping it, it's stripping copy protection, which is probably because people are looking for a way to copy DVDs and stuff, which is not a good idea. But the reason I use it is because the Chromecast only outputs HDCP, even if it's plugged into a device that doesn't support it. And I'm using the Chromecast to show this chat, which is not, you know, someone's copyrighted material. It's comments on YouTube. Thank you, John, for the super chat. Did you have a question, or did I already answer your question? But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's see. This is... Oh, did I already answer that one? I did. Can videos in a project created with the ATEM Mini ISO model be resynced? Looking to use one wireless HDMI and one on cable, and the difference is 6 frames. Yeah. So I've actually been doing this. I've actually been recording the last couple of videos of like the edited videos that I do on this channel using the ATEM Mini ISO. So when you see me like at this desk on one of those videos, I'm probably recording on the ISO just because it's the easiest thing that way. And what I do is because I already have my computer running into the ISO and my camera or another camera, it's just so much easier to just hit record, and then I get all of those video files on the hard drive that I can edit later. And they're all like, you know, synced up in terms of they start and stop at the same time. However, I had to deal with this with the video I just did yesterday, where the actual video recorded was at a whole bunch of different aspects of being out of sync. So there was the video feed from this camera is the one that's like in sync. And then there's the video out from the computer, which is going through eCam, which means it's got a delay that my computer is adding. Then there was I don't even remember. There was like 4 different angles, right? And they all had different sync points. And I wanted to, when I cut to a shot of like my computer or showing like a YouTube video, I want it to look like it's in sync, even if it actually wasn't. So I shifted all of those frames. So what you do is you open up the ISO project, and you can just go in and just like re-edit the multicam clip and shift the individual things over to bring them back into sync. And it does work that way. It's a little bit of work, and I recommend doing like at least a clap or have a real clapper to help with that. I did not do that last time, and that was frustrating. And I just noticed a super chat down here. Raphael, thank you very much. Thanks for being a fan. I appreciate it. Why does the ATEM Mini not have multiple view options? I'm not sure what you mean, because there are a lot of options. So you can choose what goes out over the HDMI. There's a lot of picture-in-picture or different composite modes. If you have a specific thing you're looking to do, we can try it right now. And there are some limits. It can't do everything, but it can do an awful lot. Let's see. Newton says, just got my ATEM Mini Pros past Friday and want to use my iPad for my images and videos. Can I use it as one of the HDMI ins, or can it only be used as the HDMI out? Want to use iPad Pro for images and videos. Totally, yeah. If you run an HDMI out from your iPad into the ATEM, it works great. I do it all the time. If you just use the Photos, just like the Photos app from Apple, it actually outputs like a clean version of the photo over HDMI, which is super convenient. And it means that it just makes it like a black border, so you can actually key it out if you want. Then you can also find like better apps, like iMix 16 is an app for playing video clips on cue. So you get a bunch of buttons that you can use to play individual video clips at a certain time, or you can make a cue list and then just hit, next, next, next. Lots of good options there. It's a great idea. All right. Is it possible to work with companion Pi software and use the Pi for RTMP streaming? I haven't actually tried that, but I think it would work. The reason is because the RTMP streaming isn't actually very CPU intensive at all. So it doesn't actually take much for the Pi to do the RTMP streaming. It's mostly just moving bits around over the network. As long as you're not trying to re-encode the video on the Pi. And I think it would work just fine. At some point, I should set it up here so I can actually try that stuff out on my desk, because I normally take that other Pi and use it for different projects as my like scratch thing. But this one is permanently installed, and I'm not doing anything with the HDMI out from it. All right, let's see. This is an interesting one. I heard in Germany you shouldn't use the Holly on Mars because it doesn't support DFS and can therefore interfere with weather radar. Is that a problem in the US as well? I'm surprised this would be different because the Holly on Mars uses the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. I think it's also 5, but it uses the same as Wi-Fi. So it shouldn't be conflicting with other stuff unless the Wi-Fi channels are different in Germany, but I didn't think they were. I thought Wi-Fi was all the same everywhere. This is a weird one. Having sound level issues on Zoom, using the Rode wireless lavs into a Sony and then to the ATEM. Sony set to manual, but levels fluctuate. So Zoom has its own levels setting that you can do in there. So Zoom has like this, where's my Zoom? In Zoom, there's a setting for changing whether or not it will change the audio automatically. So you can try to go disable that and see if that helps. Let me see if I have yeah. So if you look at Zoom, automatically adjust microphone volume. So if you disable that, it might help, and then you can actually go and tweak the levels manually. So give that a shot. That might fix it for you. There's also a setting in Zoom which is, let's see, yeah, in the advanced. So under advanced here, show in-meeting option to enable original sound. So if you know you have a good microphone and good audio setup and you're not going to be sending feedback or have bad echoes, you can actually disable echo cancellation entirely and even make it work in high fidelity music mode so that it doesn't do bad compression on the audio. And then when you're in a meeting, you'll get this enable original sound button, which will basically disable all of Zoom's fancy audio processing. Because if you know you have good audio, you don't need Zoom to be doing the very aggressive audio processing that most people need, because most people are using terrible microphones in terrible rooms. So see if that helps. Thank you, John. All right, that was for the other super chat. Mark says, can I send the different inputs that ATEM Mini receives into OBS as different sources? No, this is unfortunately not the case. It would be very cool if it could do that, but that would be a very different device. The ATEM Mini shows up as one video source in the computer, not all of the inputs. So yeah, I guess clarification from Roland here. It will send you one video stream, but it won't send. So and you can switch that stream, of course, by pressing the different buttons, but it's not going to give you all video signals at the same time. All right, who else we got here in the chat? It's cold today, and I am happy to have this coffee here. Christopher says, would you do a second video demonstrating how to remote connect outside of your network the Pi? Yes, I am planning on doing that. I definitely am. And what I'm looking for is a good VPN solution that I can recommend before doing this video. So I'm trying some stuff out there, and the reason is because as much as I can tell people to port forward their stuff, that's just going to be a nightmare of comments because everybody's routers are different and they may not know how to access their routers. So a VPN will be a lot easier, and that's how I'm planning on doing that video. Oh, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Very good point, Roland. Original sound on is per meeting. So it gives you a button in the meeting that says turn on original sound. It does not stick between meetings. pickleJAR says, can you please do a video setting up AirTurn to Button Footswitch with your ATEM? I'm going to add that to the list. That's a good idea. Because yeah, I showed it in the live stream, but it wasn't like a tutorial, and it was, yeah, it was a bit convoluted. There's a lot of steps there. Good SEO on that title there. All right. Let's see, I think I missed some. The chat skipped. It keeps doing that. Let me scroll back up to higher up. Where was? Oh yeah, and it's doing that thing where it is redoing my... It hasn't been that long yet. This chat extension is not perfect. My chat doesn't work. Yeah, it's not perfect. Definitely not perfect. I am sorry. I don't know. This is not a officially supported by YouTube thing at all. Oh, here's one. Game Mikey says, what's the piece of gear you most regret purchasing? That's a fun question. Let's see. Oh, and my lights turned green. Thank you for the super chat, Tom. I appreciate it. All right, what is the piece of gear I most regret purchasing? Let's see. I think, let's see. I bought some cheap lights in the past that I kind of regret purchasing because they just aren't good enough, and I've had to just find other options for them. So that was unfortunate. Tommy will appreciate that. Spend money on good lights, turns out. Don't spend money on cheap lights. Every time I've spent more money on lights, like getting good ones, I don't regret it. So that's something. What else? Cheap tripods too, actually. Yeah. I've got this I've got a tripod over there that I use for my main camera when I'm filming stuff at the table over there, and that's the most I've spent on a tripod. It still wasn't even like one of the expensive ones, but it was more than I've spent before, and it was not at all, I don't at all regret that. So I do regret spending money on cheap tripods because they fall apart and just don't work well. I think the theme there is cheap gear. There's some stuff that's inexpensive that is good. So that's the thing, is like, it's not just a matter of price. There's a quality thing there too. My wireless is battery's about to die. I need to change that. I need to just actually get a USB wire over on this desk, but this is my wireless transmitter for so apparently that monitor is part of that chain. This should be a fresh battery. There we go. 8 volts, turn on, go, 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 and we're back. Now it'll sync up there in a second. All right. Where was I in the comments? Tom says, some months back, I bought the Wirecast software. Then I learned how oh my gosh. I don't know if you heard that, but that was a lot of feedback. It's going to do it again in a second. For 1 second. For some reason, when that monitor turns on, from when it gets a new signal, it turns the volume back on, and that was at volume 1, and then it just makes a feedback loop. So, yeah, I need to figure that out. All right, what we're talking about. Tom asks, about the Wirecast software, and then I learned how CPU hungry it was, and bought the ATEM Mini and the Mini Pro. Do you ever see me use Wirecast again? Ha ha ha. I used Wirecast last, I think, 6 years ago. Yeah, any of those stuff, like any of the software-based streaming stuff is going to require a lot of CPU. And it's also like always gonna be more powerful. You can always, or more flexible rather, because you can do everything in software. Like Ecamm is very cool. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. It does require a lot of CPU. That is the only downside. And yeah, Wirecast is the same idea. What exactly does the Chromecast... oh, I don't understand this question. If you're talking about the Chromecast HDMI HDCP issue, it's that the Chromecast only ever outputs HDCP and it won't negotiate. Like most devices that do support HDCP will negotiate, and if the receiver does not, it will not encrypt the signal. So the Apple TV, for example, will say, it'll go, you know, probe the HDMI device, and then it'll say like, oh, if it doesn't support HDCP, I'm going to not encrypt the signal. Sometimes then when you play media, it will then re-encrypt it again, but at least for like the navigation and stuff, it doesn't. The Chromecast just doesn't do that handshake. So the that's why I need to go through a splitter to that strips HDCP, which is not supposed to be something that they are allowed to do. I have an idea of creating a kit to turn the ATEM Mini Pro into an 8-input HDMI SDI 4-aux setup using the Blackmagic 20x20 router and the rodecaster as audio input. That sounds like fun. That also sounds like a very expensive kit and a lot of converters, because you're going to need SDI to HDMI converters for all of those. So the 20x20 router, this is really cool. And I think I mentioned it briefly last week, but I want something like that for my desk here because I have too many inputs. Like I've already got more things on my desk than inputs into the ATEM. So you'll see like on my multi-view, you can see a camera, the Chromecast, the computer screen, which isn't always the same as the Chromecast, right? And then the other ATEM. That other ATEM, if I show you, it's going to be a bit of a feedback loop here, but I've got the camera again, so it goes into that ATEM. My second camera, oh, now I'm not pointing to this one because that one didn't change. That's interesting. Man, yeah, too many signals here. So there it is. Nope, there it is. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. Yes. I think you're seeing the right thing now. No, you're not. Why are you not? My head hurts. Yes. Okay. You're seeing my multi-view. Yes. Okay. Which is now my camera, my wide camera, the Hyperdeck, so I can play stuff, which happens to also be the multi-view but from the other ATEM, which is just, that's the feedback loop that's happening here. And that's actually an Apple TV, which is actually showing me the NDI feed from Ecamm. which is interesting. So like if I go back into eCam and change this to like this view, you'll see that change on that screen because that's actually going over NDI. So I've got my Apple TV, I've got the Hyperdeck, I've got there's just too many things on my desk, and I want to be able to route them all to different ways. And I've also like got this monitor here, which I want multi-view in this mode, but I want to be my computer screen in other times. So I'm thinking a matrix would solve that, where I can just reassign inputs to outputs arbitrarily. And I found a 8x8 HDMI matrix that was only a couple $100, which was the cheapest one I found. I tried it. It unfortunately had a couple of problems that were basically deal breakers. So again, HDCP is this sort of nightmare of a problem here, which is that device supports HDCP, which is good. It means you can use it with HDCP devices. However, what that means is that if you plug a computer into it, the computer says, oh, this device supports HDCP, let's encrypt the signal. Fine. So it's getting the encrypted signal. If you output from that to another device, that other device has to also support HDCP. And then it'll decrypt the signal at the other end. So it's like passing through the encrypted signal. And that means if I try to route my computer screen to the ATEM, it doesn't work because the ATEM does not decrypt HDCP. So it's kind of just, I just can't do it. It doesn't work. And I would need to strip HDCP somewhere along that chain using some other device before, like from my computer to a HDCP either stripper or something that tells it doesn't support, like Negotiator, it doesn't support HDCP. And that would then work. So anyway, the device also had some other problems, like it was not easily network controllable, which was a deal breaker for me. So I returned it, and I'm looking for a better one. And possibly the right way to do this is to go all SDI for everything, because SDI is the pro solution for that and would be a lot more reliable. So that's a thought. That is thought. And it's just very expensive. Very expensive. I need a lot of SDI converters too. Jeff says, can you post a block diagram of your ATEM wiring setup on your forum somewhere? It would make it easy to understand. It would. One of the problems, getting back to this thing I was just talking about, is that it changes a lot. So it's like, I don't even know how it's plugged in right now because I'm using this transmitter and this monitor here and all that. I forgot all the things, how they're connected, but I change it up every week. And that's part of the problem, is that yeah, it's always changing. And if I had a router, I could at least have the wires all stay the same and then reassign everything virtually. This is a very good point. Does the monitor have a headphone jack, cut a 3.5-inch cable and put into the monitor, have a physical mute? I like it. Does it? Oh, there's no headphone jack. There's another USB, but there's no headphone jack on that. That's bizarre. How is your DIY streaming bridge working out? Did you ever get one? Probably didn't need to. I still have one on order from DVE Store, but I still don't have the real streaming bridge. Yeah, no update from anybody on when that is shipping. I haven't actually used the streaming bridge for that much yet, though, or the fake one, the Raspberry Pi version, other than just my initial testing. But I do want to, at some point, try to bring on another guest using that device. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, I skipped ahead. Where was I? Oh, this is about the case. The very expensive 20x20 case with 2 Raspberry Pis for playback and for companion. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Aha, 5 gigahertz has channels that shows into radar frequencies, but UBNT Wi-Fi actually has radar warning. That's right. There's other stuff on 5 gigahertz. Maybe that's what's going on with the Hollyland. All right. Looking for a solution to record a Zoom meeting not using the app. I tried HDMI grabber to USB into OBS. I'm getting the meeting audio, but not my mic. Right, because Zoom doesn't echo your own audio back to you. So if you are outputting your computer's HDMI and audio into something that captures it, your own audio won't be included because Zoom doesn't echo your own audio back, because it would be very annoying. The solution there is either use a totally separate computer that's just tuned into the meeting, right? So that you have like a sort of a guest that's just watching on mute, no video, and then it'll hear the entire audio and you can just screen capture that computer. Or you can use a software audio router. What's the one? There's one by Rogue Amoeba. I just used it for something last week. Now I'm forgetting the name of it. What's it called? Loopback from Rogue Amoeba. And what that does is basically gives you an audio router inside your computer, and then you can make a virtual audio device that mixes your microphone with the Zoom output and sends it out over HDMI, while Zoom is then using just your microphone. So it's honestly easier to just use a separate computer and capture off of the other computer. Michael says, I noticed if you set the Blackmagic 4K camera to 4K, the viewing area is larger and crisp compared to the ATEM, and the ISO scales it to 1080. Is this true of all cameras? No, I have noticed this about the Pocket 4K as well. If you tell the Pocket 4K to go into 1080, then it like crops into a 1080 part of the sensor. So you only use part of the sensor. It doesn't use the 4K sensor and then scale it. So if you set it to 4K, you get to use the whole sensor, and then it will be scaled out of the HDMI. So that is definitely not the case of all cameras. So that's something particular to that camera. Cool, got VLC on a Raspberry Pi 4, controlling it via companion, using it as a separate video player that can be controlled over the network. Very cool. That is a good solution as well. Yeah, audio hijack or voice meter on Windows. Or loopback is another one. So this is interesting. I see the rodecaster in people's photos of their desks and like in the backgrounds of videos all the time. And I have not heard people talk about it very much. Like, people don't seem to be blown away by it or find it very useful or anything. Like, it seems very expensive, and I can't say I'm disappointed that I didn't buy it now. I was considering buying one because I was like, oh, this seems like a great device to have for doing mix minus and audio routing stuff, but I haven't actually heard that many good things about it, so I'm kind of just thinking I'm gonna skip it. Also, they're not going to send me one because I'm not big enough for that kind of marketing budget. Is it possible to somehow display preview over USB-C on the computer? No, it's not. USB-C will only do program out from the ATEM. If not, how can I achieve having regular output to the stream and a separate screen for preview? If you're talking about the regular ATEM Mini, not the Pro, then the HDMI can be your preview, but the original ATEM doesn't have multi-view, just preview, and then the USB output to your computer for streaming. But if you have the Pro, it works great because the HDMI does multi-view, which is what you're seeing here, and then the ATEM can stream the program itself as well. All right. How do you get the light to change color when you get a super chat? That is a integration through if this then that, IFTTT. And it's just like someone made that, but you just go in and like configure it, just connect your Google account, connect your Hue account, and it's a Hue bulb in there. So it's super simple, super straightforward. I didn't have to do anything. It was great. Built-in function in vMix is really good with the chat function. Was that about something that I forgot? I don't remember what that was about. I have a Donner Bluetooth foot switch for page turning music. Would the tutorial be the same since it's simply a Bluetooth device? Yeah, pretty much. So there might be like slight differences in like the values you have to plug in for the thing that turns the Bluetooth signals into ATEM Mini signals, but it'll be pretty much the same process. I have not finished the lights on my ceiling yet. That is, I am so... This is like, this has been dragging on for so long. I need to figure this out. The problem I have right now is the power supply for the LEDs is about this big old block, and I need to attach it to the ceiling in some way that looks good. So I need it to be like, I don't know, like under a piece of wood that I've bolted to the ceiling somehow, or like in a little case that still has ventilation, or I don't know. Like I haven't figured out how I'm attaching that to the ceiling yet. I also can't even just attach it hackily because there aren't any screw holes in a way that I can use on that. So I need to build something to attach that to the ceiling, and then I can finally finish. So. All right, here's a good question. What's the best method to stream to YouTube from an ATEM Mini not Pro? So there's generally two different ways you can do it. You either plug in the USB-C into your computer, and then it shows up as a webcam. And I believe the YouTube Studio has a way to stream from a webcam, which is probably then the simplest. So you go into the YouTube Studio, start a live stream, and then tell it to use your ATEM as the camera. And then you're just in the YouTube browser for that. Or you can use a software like OBS on your computer, OBS, vMix, whatever, it doesn't matter at that point. You're not really using that for anything except doing the streaming, which is why you might as well use the webcam version of it. Or you take the HDMI out from the ATEM and go into a dedicated encoder, which would be something like the Webcaster X2, which isn't actually sold anymore, but Webcaster X2, or there's a bunch of little H.264 encoders on Amazon, and those you configure the streaming key in that device, and it has an HDMI port, and then that does the encoding to YouTube. Either of those are fine, and it depends on whether you want your computer to be involved in the streaming of it or not, or whether you like having a separate device or not. Trade-offs on both sides of that. Do you see any scenarios I will use Wirecast after I bought the ATEM Mini and the Mini Pro? So I will say, one of the cool things about things like Wirecast or Ecamm or any of the software switchers is that you can use them as graphics generators, essentially. Like graphics generators, video playback things, and they're very flexible, a lot more than you can do in the ATEM. So even if you're not running your video through those, you could use those, like your main camera, you can use those for graphics, video playback. Like the countdown that I had in here was, I was doing that through Ecamm, where, let me see if I can load up that screen on here. So like, oh, I have to move all my windows back over to this because that's how, oh my gosh, what just happened? Ecamm is a little bit fiddly. So here's Ecamm, but there's other windows on my other screen. So I kind of wish it would just like be one window. Anyway, so in here I can go and like show a background graphic or not. I can show a countdown. I can add other things. I can add like a web page widget. I can add other video clips. Oh, cameras. Let's not do that. I can add text, right? So you can do all sorts of stuff in these software. This would be the same with Wirecast. Like Wirecast has a bunch of the same stuff, right? I just don't have Wirecast. But same idea, right? So you can just use it as a generator and then feed the output of this into your ATEM for streaming. So this is the program feed that this is generating. It's sending it out over NDI, which then shows up in my Apple TV, but it also has the, you know, output over over HDMI, which would then output the signal directly into the ATEM. So definitely cool. Like, that's how I would expect to, why can't I move that window? Okay. That's how I would expect to use Wirecast once you've switched to streaming from the ATEM Mini Pro. Oh, this must be about the lighting question. Oh, sorry, I just saw a super chat. Thank you. I did not use the @ symbol question at around 10:30. Ooh, I don't have timestamps in my chat. Let's see, Keith. 10:30 was like a half hour ago. Here is, it's amazing, you need one. Here is, you might have to just ask the question again. Lost audio. Yeah, I lost the question. Sorry. Go ahead and just type it in again. The Fairlight FX mixer in the ATEM provides much better capabilities to engineer one's audio than the Rodecaster. Interesting. I would have assumed the Rodecaster has a lot of those same audio features. That is really interesting. I know that the Rodecaster does show up as a USB audio device, which is cool because then it does mix minus, which is very useful for bringing in remote people. But that is, yeah, interesting point that it doesn't have all the compressor and limiter and stuff. All right, I'm waiting for Keith to drop that question in again. I'm going to keep an eye down there. You didn't follow up the advice from last week to place an extra hair light. That is true. I did not redo my lighting this week. I didn't actually have a lot of time in this studio over the last week. So yeah, I still need to do, that's Tommy's advice of adding a little bit of light up here. I don't even have like a little light to throw on there right now, but yeah, a little bit of light up there. I need to figure out where to mount it. I'm not quite sure where that would go. Okay, here we go. Lost audio from my Hyperdeck Mini from SDI. Worked great for 2 weeks. Using a Blackmagic converter, HDMI out works great. That's weird. If you're getting audio from the HDMI out and not from SDI, then that sounds like a problem with the Hyperdeck, because there's not a lot of options you get on that device to begin with. So I would talk to Blackmagic, honestly. That seems like a problem. Unless you're going into some other device out of the SDI that might be causing the audio to drop after. But if you can monitor direct from, the SDI into like a monitor with a headphone jack, just to double check, I would try that first. And if you're not getting audio, it sounds like a problem, and I would talk to Blackmagic support. We should all use our collective power to get Blackmagic to add their Resolve text engine to the ATEM Mini. They did it for Fairlight. That's an interesting point. That's a very good point. Huh. Yeah. Being able to do text generators, even basic text generators in the ATEM Mini would be very, very cool. And they did bring Fairlight into the ATEM, so that is cool. Wirecast has a mobile app. That's a good point too. I didn't know that. Last time I used Wirecast, I don't think they had a mobile app because it was so long ago. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Do you have any experience with HDCP issues when using HDMI to SDI, or does it just work? I need to double check. I should actually try the Chromecast into this SDI thing, but we're like almost out of time. I don't want to... Can I do it? No, I don't think I want to do that. What I'm guessing is that the HDMI to SDI converter does not say that it supports HDCP. So I'm guessing that any device that does a handshake would not encrypt the signal, and the Chromecast probably wouldn't work because the Chromecast always sends HDCP. I don't think those are going to strip HDCP. That is my guess. I should probably test that out, but we're almost out of time. Okay, let me see. Oh, here's the full part of that. They have a mobile app that people use to get remotely onto a stream. That is, yeah. So Ecamm has that too, which is the video I did yesterday, where you just send them a link. You send your guest a link. They join from a webcam, which could be an ATEM Mini, like Tommy did last week. And that is a very good use for the software version of switchers. And then depending on the application, you can get that signal into your ATEM somehow. But that was my video I just published yesterday, so go take a look at that if you want a rundown of how to do that with Ecamm Live. Yeah, there's about 3.5 second delay on the Raspberry Pi streaming bridge, even on the local network, so it might not be great for interviews. What I'm thinking is that it would not be possible to have a conversation over it, but it might be acceptable for like slower interview style, right? Where I like I'm going to introduce someone and they're going to talk for a while and then I switch back to me. But like a back and forth conversation like last week's, I don't think it would work if I had both of them on the stream at the same time. So here's a good question. When I take a load of networked gear, ATEM, Raspberry Pis, H2R, to a new venue, their venue router always reassigns IPs. Can I avoid this so IPs don't keep changing? Yes, you can. Okay, this is my recommendation for this. Basically create your own local network. So there's a couple ways to do that, but the sort of easy way is just grab any router, like traditional router, bonus if it has Wi-Fi in it, and then when you go to a venue, you plug in that router's internet port to the venue. So you're only plugging in one thing to their network. And then that router is your own network, your own private network. And then you can set up static IPs. You know the address space, you have complete control within your network. So like in the video I did, the bicycle rig of shooting the conference, one of the pieces in that box is a router, so that I have my own local network on the desk. And then all of my devices, I know the IP addresses. But the key there is bringing a router, not just having like a switch, because if you use a switch, you're still on their address space. All right, see if I can get to a couple more questions, but then we're gonna wrap up here and we are going to, oh, that was from when there was feedback on the stream. Yeah, feedback from the TV. Oh, nice. I always thought that was a big screen TV way behind you. Yeah, you don't really get a sense of depth when I've just got this gray flat wall here, but no, it's just this little tiny 13-inch monitor on a stand. Okay, let's see. I think we're almost out of time here. I know I'm not getting to all the questions, but okay, here's a good one. I saw a video of Alex using OBS to bring in videos, but would you recommend iMix over OBS? iMix, so do I have it on this iPad? One of the reasons I like, no, I don't have it on this one, it's my other one. One of the reasons I like iMix is that it's a very simple interface. It's just a grid of buttons, and it's very then, easy to use and not a lot of fiddling. So you can have it sitting on a table and then just tap stuff. With OBS, you're using your computer to control it, but you could also script it with like a Stream Deck. So there's trade-offs, but I do like the sort of, it's automatically just like its own screen and stuff that you can use once it's running on the iPad. Rodecaster will get some output to any venue PA system. That is a good point. You can send audio out easier. So if you're not just streaming, then yeah. But there's a lot of good mixers that can do that too, and you don't always need the full features of the Rodecaster to do that. All right, I think that's about it for today. Sorry I didn't get to all the questions. Let's see. Can I bring up my end music? Sorry if you are just now joining. We're wrapping up here. I hope. Some closing music. I hope we got some good questions answered, and as always, keep posting questions in the comments. Happy to keep answering questions there. Do join the forums if you want to answer or ask more questions to get a lot more eyeballs on it than just me. So take a look. There's a link in the description for the forums. And yeah, take a look at the video I just published yesterday. That was a fun one, talking about the setup I used last week to bring Tommy into the stream. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.